Hi there, my name is MojibadeShow, but you can call me MojibadeShow or the Lady MC. According to Carol Burnett, she said, if you have a dream, you gotta go for it and never let it go. As we journey through life, we meet some people whose stories are nothing short of inspiring, encouraging, and I dare say mind-blowing. I've met some of those people, and today I'm privileged to be speaking with one of them, Captain Zino, a gentleman whose story is captivating, inspiring, and I dare say interesting. Stay with me as I speak to him. Hello, Captain Zino.
Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm alive, so no complaints. I'm doing good. I'm doing
Okay.
Nice to be here.
I'm happy to be here as well. I've read your story and I'm like, wow, the world has to hear this. Like, we can't sit on this mine of gold. Like we had to share this story with everyone.
Yeah.
So, but just before we get into the crux of this sit down interview, no one-on-one.
It's a chat.
It's a chat.
Yeah.
Right. Let me give you a trick question.
Oh, okay.
If you've been in a jungle for about 2 days with no food, no water,
okay,
and then you walk out and then you have access to pounded yam and okra soup with Niger jollof rice, plantain and chicken, what are you going for?
Both. Yeah, probably okra soup and then pounded yam.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we get to meet the amazing, the incredible, the outstanding, excellent Captain Zino. So let me not do the intro. I mean, let me just give them an overview. But you tell us, who is Captain Zino?
Who is Captain Zino? I think that a lot of people, they tend to focus on the captain element. Oh, he's a pilot, he's a captain, everything. But I think like that's just one part of my life. Like I do a lot more things. I'm more than my profession. I do a lot of things. I'm a music producer. I'm really big on music, create Christian music. I've been doing that for a few years. I describe myself as a visionary. I've got a vision. I know what I want to achieve in life, and I'm working as God leads me to do that. I'm a mentor. I mentor a lot of young people. I mentor young men, young women, not just in the aviation sense, but I also mentor them in terms of, I do business mentoring, business coaching, life coaching as well. Yeah, that's pretty much about me in a nutshell. And above all, I'm a child of God. That's the number one. That's the only thing that matters. It's the most important thing. And yeah, there are a few other things as well, but in a nutshell, that's
Okay, I like that you talked about your multi-passionate self, because again, when you hear captains, you automatically just see airplanes.
That's it.
You just see the aviation part of you, but you're a music producer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a few years now.
Interesting.
Going about maybe 10 years or so. I've been doing that.
Wow.
Now, it's funny because like you look, but you can like produce something and you think, yeah, this is really, really good. And then like 5 years later, you listen, you're like, oh my goodness, that was bad. Like, my parents, you should have told me this was this bad, But yeah, I've been doing it for about 10 years now.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm really big on that.
Do you have other interests?
Yeah. I'm an avid sports fan. I support Arsenal.
Just pause. Arsenal.
Yeah, I'm
High five.
Come on, yeah. And you're repping our colors as well.
Always.
You know what's up. So yeah, I do that as well. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm really, really big on business. I'm really big on building stuff, and I'm a creative, right? So I just love having an idea, and it's the same thing with music, right? Like you sit down, you have an idea, it sounds good in your head, and you're like, whoa, I need to now birth this. I need to create it. And so it's the same thing I do with my businesses and my ideas, and yeah.
Interesting. And for most people, to be fair, your childhood plays a significant role in who you become and in your journey. So do you think your childhood has played any roles in the Captain Zino we have today, your multi-passionate self?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. It's my childhood. Obviously, your childhood shapes you, right? So it's played a humongous role. My dad especially. My dad's also a pilot as well. Yeah, that's kind of how I got into aviation. But yeah, it's definitely shaped me. I think that, like I mentioned with my dad, You know, I come from an aviation family, which a lot of people don't know. Like, my dad's a pilot, my brother's a pilot, engineer slash pilot, engineer by day, pilot by night, right? So he's a pilot. I've got a cousin with a pilot's license. My late uncle, you know, rest in peace. You know, he was also a commercial pilot as well, and so that really shaped the whole captain side of myself. In terms of who I've become today, I would definitely say, you know, that growing up, especially with a strong personality like my dad, you know, it was huge. The impact was foundational, and it really helped me see life in a different way. I put it in the sense that he really shaped the lens in which I view life. You know, I remember when we were younger, like maybe like on a weekly basis or very regularly, you know, he would call myself, call my brother. He'd sit us down and he would tell us, hey, like, you are great.
Oh, wow.
He would be like, you are great. You are going to be great, regularly. So growing up every single day, like, I had a father that would literally sit me down, and don't get me wrong, not like I'm greater than everybody else, but just in the sense that it made you believe, and it made you realize, whoa, that I am possible of greatness, you know, and that played a huge impact, yeah.
You know, I love that you touched on your father and the role he played in helping to shape you to be the man that you are today. And I think it's a very significant role and significant thing that parents must, you know, be it father, be it mother, parents must just play in the lives of their children. Yeah. And I think that's really great. So well done to your dad.
Yeah, shout out.
You come from an aviation family.
Yeah.
I mean, your brother, your cousin, your late uncle, your dad. How was that like for you?
You know, I've been flying for a very long time. So being in an aviation family, like, you know, flying was nothing new to me. You know, I've been flying since I was about maybe 11, 12.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
He's been flying since he was 12.
Yeah, but not like
an actual plane.
Yeah, an actual plane. Yeah, but not like a 747 or something crazy, right? But we used to own our own plane.
Oh wow.
Golf Alpha Victor Whiskey Alpha was a Piper PA-28. It was like these small training planes. You know, take maybe about 4 or 5 people. And when I say we used to own it, you know, there's something called like fractional ownership. So you own it, maybe like 5 other people own it, you know, and you can basically fly whenever you want to fly.
I'm still not over it. So how did you learn to fly?
Well, when you got a dad that's a pilot, like, you will learn to fly.
Oh, wow.
So, you know.
12.
Yeah.
And you had passengers?
Yeah, well, my brother was a passenger, my mom's been a passenger. So
they trusted you at 12. I mean, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah, you know, it's
wow.
It is what it is, you know, and I think that it was really good, you know, that having that, coming from that aviation background. And even when I went over and actually started flying, like, and, you know, went to flight school, it was always kind of good having that base that, you know, if I ever struggled with anything, you know, or I wasn't sure of anything, I could always reach out to my dad, I could reach out to my brother, I could reach out to my uncle, and I really kind of had that support system, which, you know, unfortunately a lot of people don't have that. You know, they're the only ones trying to go into aviation. But yeah, it was cool. We'd rent the plane, we just fly around and just have a lot of fun.
Interesting. So just to deviate a bit.
No.
If you were not a pilot, what would you have been?
Professional footballer, you know. Ironically, you know, as much as I encourage people to start really young with aviation, and I started very young, you know, I was Nigeria's youngest pilot at the time. Got my pilot license at 18.
I'm speaking to a record breaker.
Oh, come on now.
Nigeria's youngest pilot at the time. Yeah. I mean, he's setting the pace. Come on, okay.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying this.
So I started young, and so a lot of people, they really feel like, oh, you know, this must have been your dream since you were young. And I encourage people to dream, but, you know, flying wasn't really my dream, so to speak. My dream was to play professional football. And so obviously I was born in Nigeria, but I grew up in the United Kingdom, you know, and I used to play football. I used to play a lot of sports, right? I used to play football to a high level. Used to like represent, it's called county, but like Nigeria, the equivalent would be like your state, you know? Okay. So I used to play like state football, state rugby, state athletics. So, you know, sports was really like a humongous part of my life, you know? But football was the ultimate. I tell people, like, I didn't do great at school, right? Not because I know sabi, right? Not because, you know, I'm not like intelligent, but like I was always just thinking about football. I would be in class and I'd just be sitting down just thinking about my game on Saturday.
Passing the balls on the pitch.
And I'll just dribble like this and I'll score and I'll celebrate, you know, and so, you know, a lot of football clubs was invited for a trial for a Premier League club, Stoke City at the time, and I used to play like really high level, but it's really difficult. Like it's really, really difficult. Like only 1% of people succeed. So you've got exactly, get to that really professional.
And it's competitive.
Highly competitive. And so yeah, that was actually my dream, and I pushed, and it didn't work out. And then eventually I got home one day and had a long chat with my dad, and he was like, you know what, let's actually push for this aviation thing, and went ahead with it.
Okay, interesting. All right, that was an aside. Let's get back to talking about you, a holistic you. I mean, we're still part of getting to know you.
Of course.
Anyways, so you retired quite early from flying. What inspired that decision?
So I retired at 26. I love flying. Like I'm a big fan. I encourage people. I'm really passionate about flying. But there's more to me than flying. Flying is a part of my life. It's not the entirety of my life. So I retired for a wide variety of reasons. And one was that, if you get to know me a little bit better, you'll realize that there's like, the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I'm someone that, I've just been blessed. I've got, God's been faithful to me. I've got like loads of gifts, like a host of talents, and it's to realize that there's a common denominator with all of those things, and they all require time, right? I started young, and I've achieved all that I set out to achieve. So now I took a step back to really focus on my business, growing my business, which we're doing okay, right? And so that was one reason which I retired. And the second one is family. I'm really, really big on a family. I'm a family man, and I think that, like for example, when my wife was pregnant, like I'd already taken a step back. I'd retired, and I was able to be there. I was able to, attend every single scan. Like I got to see my daughter grow on the screen, right? From being this little to being huge, right? And those are things I wouldn't trade for the world, right? Spending time with my family and being in a position that, I can fly if I want to, but not because I have to. Because family is really big for me, and a lot of other things as well. Yeah.
Interesting. I love that you're a family man, but why did you start Zino Aviation, and how has it been running Zino Aviation?
Why did we start Zino Aviation? It's a really interesting story. Coming from an aviation family, right? I always had that kind of support base, that knowledge base I could always dive into, and having people that could support me. But the vast majority of people, like 99% of people, like they're the first pilot in like their family, right? And so what happens is a lot of people were making like a ton of mistakes. When you want to become a pilot, you're looking at, you could spend anywhere between about $40,000 to $110,000, $120,000 on your training. So a lot of people, like, this is something that you don't want to be making mistakes, because your mistakes can be very costly. So we literally would see people like, spending $130,000 on training that they could have done for $40,000. But because of a lack of knowledge, they were making a lot of, fundamental mistakes. And so how it started was me on Instagram, and they'd be like, hey, like, there's no one to help me. Can you possibly help me? And I was like, not a problem. So I started responding to DMs, and eventually it was like, what, why don't we start making, videos? So I started to talk about aviation, talk about mistakes people make, flight schools, and a lot of this stuff. And before I knew it, a lot more people were contacting, and before I knew it, we're helping hundreds of aspiring pilots.
Wow.
For free. Like I would literally finish flying, come back, to my accommodation, and literally I've got like 4 calls. I'm like, okay, hey, talk to me. How can I help you? Oh, Captain Zino, da. Next one, scheduled. And I did it for over a year. And the goal was always just to help people and be accessible. Because the truth is, pilots aren't really accessible. We're few in number, and a lot of pilots, they're either too tired, too proud, right? Or they just don't want to help you. So I made up my mind that, I want to be the person that is accessible.
Great. I like that you're just dedicating your life to helping people and being accessible, leaving that room for the door to be open for people to come to you. And now it's a business anyway, so I guess you're happy to do it, and you find fulfillment doing it, I guess.
Of course.
Absolutely. All right, so as an aside, when you were actively flying, what was your most memorable flight?
My most memorable flight, I've had quite a few. I would say to be honest, memorable for good or memorable for bad, right?
You can give us both.
Give both. I would actually say my most memorable flight, because I've done flying. I have both a planes license, a helicopters license. I've got a drones license. I've got quite a few other licenses as well. And I would say for fixed wing, my most memorable flight was when I did my solo. So when you're in flight school, you know, you have an instructor. Your instructor would have taught you, you know, how to fly, and maybe I think I soloed at about I went solo maybe at about 10 hours, 11 hours. And so what happens is you do a flight with the instructor, you land, and then he just steps out of the plane and he's like, hey, it's all yours.
Oops.
And you're like, what? Like me, he's like, yeah, you've got it. And so I remember, you know, doing all my checks all by myself and then taking off. And I remember.
Were you nervous?
I wasn't really nervous. You know, I wasn't nervous because, you know, I'm naturally a confident person, but I was really excited. And I remember I like put power, I took off, and I looked beside me, I started to shout. I was like, hey, it's only me, only me. Like, I literally shouting all the way around, you know, and I was like, okay, you know, like, calm down.
Shout of excitement, wow, this is getting real.
No, both, you know, I was really excited that, wow, like here I am by myself, nobody's here, no supervision, it's all by myself. And that's called going solo, you know, and there's no experience that's like it. It's really breathtaking, you know. And for bad, I remember there was one time, like, you know, we're flying offshore helicopters, you know, and I got myself, or we got ourselves rather, into a little bit of a sticky situation and into some really bad weather. And, you know, I tell people, since I've been flying, I've only ever been afraid, flown for like close to a decade, I've only ever been afraid 4 times. And this was one of those times, right? And I remember just thinking, I was a junior co-pilot, maybe had about 400 hours or whatever. We basically had landed on an offshore oil rig, and the weather was really, really bad, you know? And so obviously it takes time for you to put passengers on, put the baggages on, all the passengers get off. And so as we did that and we took off, what happened is the weather had basically caught us in a bit of a circle. So you kind of like, you know, you take off and you put on what's called the weather radar, right? So the weather radar basically allows you to see, you know, how bad the weather is, and, you know, if there's a heavy weather here or a little bit there, and you can navigate. and we put on the weather radar and it was just all bad. Oops. And we're like, okay, this is interesting. And the weather had changed so quickly, right, that it had now like circled us. So we couldn't even go back to where we had basically come from. And so now you're in a circle, the weather's bad, what do you do? Like, I remember that day, like the entire sky was just black.
Wow.
Fully black. And I was like, right, there's no sun, there's lightning over here. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? But thank God, you know, I was flying the very experienced captain at the time, and he just kept, not that he wasn't afraid, right? Because when both pilots are afraid, then you're in trouble, right? But he kept me calm. As you know, we'll be fine, let's just reduce our power. And then we just went through it, and I'm alive, so.
Yeah, great.
It was memorable for that, in that sense.
So, you know, that leads me to something else that I always wanted to ask you. For pilots, there's always a fear, and I dare say the fear of death. How did you overcome it, or did you ever overcome it, or how were you able to navigate it, you know, whilst flying?
Okay, so you know, this is one of the fantastic things with Zino Aviation, because a lot of the people who come to us, right, they want to become pilots, but their parents are afraid they're going to die. My son, my only son.
I wanted to be an air hostess just because to experience it for a year. I love attending to people, but I have a love-hate relationship with flights, because it could be go and never come back. And I completely get it. And like I said, like, so a lot of times we have to, you know, help people understand, like, statistically speaking, you're like, the chance of you dying in a plane is like 1 in 16 million, right? Like coming here, you know, or like the amount of Danfo drivers that nearly killed me, like coming here, right? Like, and that's the thing, like, people, they look at, like, when a plane does crash, or, you know, an aircraft crashes, they're like, oh. But the reason that you have that, you know, is simply because it's so rare. Yeah. And you now finally see it. And then quite a lot of people, you know, might unfortunately meet their demise, but it's so rare. As you and I are talking right now, I guarantee you, there's a Danfo guy in a Danfo bus that's just hitting somebody and killing them. Just in case you're wondering what a Danfo is, it's our commercial buses in Nigeria. And fantastic drivers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So and so that's the thing. Like, you're statistically speaking, you're more likely to slip in your bathtub and die, but we don't, go stop having showers or whatever, right? So have I been afraid? Obviously in my younger years, but one thing which I tell people is that fear is significantly, induced by ignorance. You're afraid of what you don't know. So I think, like one time I was flying, I wasn't the one flying, but I was on a commercial flight, in America, I think we're going for like Cincinnati to somewhere. And I was sat down beside this lady as the plane was, about to take off or whatever, she was like, like she was really shaking. So I had a chat, so I waited until we got airborne. And I had a chat with her. I was like, hey, it's like, you don't really like flying much. She was like, no, that she's always really afraid. And I was like, okay, so sometimes you might hear some particular sound. She's like, yeah, like whenever I hear this sound, I feel. So I said, okay, you know what? Let's wait a few minutes. We're about to start descending, right? Have a look at the wing. I said, in a minute, you're going to see the wing change shape and you're going to hear this particular noise. And then she saw it and she was like, and I said, no, that noise is just what's going on here. That's called the flaps, right? You're afraid because you don't know. And as this young lady was able to get more knowledge, she was fine. And so for me, I was afraid initially, but as time went on, I realized there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Aviation is the most regulated industry in the world. It's the safest industry in the world.
Interesting. So. Wow. A little more about you, Captain Zino. What makes you unique, one, and what are the things that drive you? What motivates you to be this excellent person that you are?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm excellent.
I think you are, because you're so passionate about so many things and you do them. You know how to manage your time.
I would say what makes me unique. First of all, I tell everyone, everybody's unique. We're all individuals. I think for me, mindset is key. A lot of people I feel in life, they're just inhibited by their mindsets. A lot of people have limiting mindsets. For me, I talk about my father a lot, and if you remember earlier in the conversation, I spoke about how that was things he would do were very foundational to kind of shape me. And one thing that was really key for me was when we were younger, when we wanted to travel, like go on holiday, you know how Nigerians are, like we rock up with the suitcases, that are just heavy and packed and numerous and whatever. And so, we'd pack all the suitcases in the house. And when it would be time to, go to put them in the car, my dad would send me, go put the suitcase in the car. So I'd be like, oh, I don't want to put it. And I would put them in, but they would never fit. And so you can't shut the boot. And I would go back. I'd say, Daddy, like this is not possible. It's impossible. Like we need to drop a suitcase. He'd be like, no, go try again. And so I'm like, ugh. So I'd go back. I would try. I would twist. I would turn everything. And I'm like, look, this guy doesn't understand. This is not possible. So I would go back and I'm like, look, I've tried. He said, go try again. And I would come back and he said, okay, don't worry, I'll do it. And I kid you not, this thing didn't happen once or twice. This happened numerous times. He would simply go, do, bam. Yes, and I'm like, and he would turn to me and be like, I thought you said it was impossible. And he would basically instilled in me this attitude and this mindset that there's always a way. You just have to figure out that way. There's always a way to achieve something. Impossible doesn't exist. And so what makes me unique, I would say predominantly it's my mindset. I have a never say die attitude. I have an attitude that, hey, yeah, other people might have failed, but that's them. Like, I think when you think about it this way, right, we've been to the moon. People need to understand that whatever you're thinking is impossible right now. Like, we've literally left the planet and landed on the moon. If you had told anybody this, right, maybe like a few hundred years ago, they would have laughed you to scorn, but we've done it. And so the mindset I have is that you can achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve, as long as you can.
Have you done it?
Say again?
Have you done it? Have you landed on the moon?
Landed on the moon?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Just checking.
Not yet, but who knows what the future holds, So I think that's one thing, I would say what makes me also, unique is I'm quite resilient. I don't really get intimidated, and I just love to help people. I'm someone that I don't help people to get anything in return. If you tell me thank you, that's great. But for me, I love it when I see other people succeed and know, hey, like I had a part to play in that. And then
that makes you happy.
And I'm winning. That was the first thing. What was the second thing you said?
What drives you?
What drives me? Okay. I would say only two things. One, God. Two, my family, my wife and my daughter. When I say God, mentioned about mindset, it's still pretty much the same thing. You know, I came to this understanding, I think maybe a few years ago. I was like, hold on a minute, like, so one day we're all gonna die. 56 million people die every single year, and I'm like, whoa, like it's not like, oh, it might happen. No, it's going to happen. If you go back to the year, I don't know, 1850, there's nobody that was alive in 1850 that's alive now. It doesn't matter if the population was like 20 billion, all 20 billion, to the exception of none, have died. And so for me, I realized, hold on a minute. So if I'm gonna die, right, then what is it that counts? And I'm a Christian, and I believe that one day I'm gonna stand before God in judgment. And I really believe that he's gonna look at me, and like I said earlier, to whom much is given, much is expected. Zino, I gave you all of these gifts. I gave you this time. You know, you got 100 years, Zino. Some other people only got 20 years. Like, what have you done with your time? What have you done with the gifts that I've given you? And so for me, there's always this underlying thought that drives me that, hey, you know what? When I stand before God, I want to be able to give good answers. I want to be able to know that, hey, you know what? I gave it my all. I used every single gift. I impacted as many people as possible. And so that really drives me. And then there's my family. They drive me a lot, you know, especially, you know, I've got a daughter now. She's about 15 months. For me, there's a big responsibility. You know, I want to be the protector of my home, the provider. I want to be the priest, you know? And for me, I'm not perfect by any, you know, form of measurement. You know, I still have a long way to go, but I want to be the best husband, you know, for my wife. I want to be the best father for my daughter. I'm not perfect. I will never be perfect, but I want them to know, hey, you know what? He gave his all. So I try my best to improve. And I want, like I said, I'm very protective. When I say protector, provider, priest, that's the one that I think I'm doing okay for now. I'm very protective, and I just want to be the best man that I can be for them. And yeah, my motivation.
Great. I like that. So it's been very obvious through our conversations that you are a God lover. Now, how has your faith impacted your life, and how does it continue to impact your life generally?
Significantly, you know, God's the center of my life. Let's put it that way, you know. And I think that when you have something that drives you, right, it permeates into every area of your life. Like I don't make any, you know, I don't want to act as if, oh, I am thou holy or whatever, but I think it really governs you. My faith governs me because it governs my decision making. It governs how I react in certain situations where I might want to react like this, I might want to do this, but God is watching me. And I think that, you know, as a Christian, fundamentally, I'm always thinking like, okay, God is watching me. You know, I think, for example, a lot of people, like I've had opportunities to do certain things, you know, in life, certain temptations or certain, like, you know, from a business side, maybe bribe and get a contract or whatever, you know, but there's that deeper understanding that this is wrong and God is watching me, you know. And there's a particular scripture I read ages ago, and it said, no, promotion doesn't come from like the north or the south, whatever, like it comes from the Lord. And so for me, like that was a eureka moment, because I was like, hold on a minute, wait. So in other words, the only way up is if God takes you up. And I think a lot of times in life, like people, they try to take themselves up. I'll just compromise here. But God is just from up, he's just looking at you. And so for me, knowing that, hey, you know what, this is my faith, this is what I profess, I'm a Christian, there's a certain standard that God is expecting of me, you know. And I think that, like I said, it governs my decision making. And I follow God. I take orders, I take instructions, right? And it governs how I treat people. It governs how you even behave in marriage. You know, you might think, oh well, you know what? But it's like, hey, you gotta die to self, right? You gotta love your wife, and it's just central part to everything.
Right. You know, I love that you're also very vocal about your love for God. I love that you're very vocal about your beliefs in God, your belief in God, because not everyone can confidently come out to say it, especially in this world that we live in. So that's really great. So as we begin to wrap up this part of getting to know you, something interesting caught my attention about you.
Okay.
You moved back to Nigeria.
Yes.
At about 19.
Yeah.
What inspired that decision? I mean, it's very, especially for your industry, I mean, aviation industry, you'd rather, you know, just enjoy what you have out there. What inspired that decision, one? And secondly, looking at the Nigeria of today, do you have any regrets?
I've actually moved back to Nigeria twice. So the first one was obviously initially to come back and work. There were a lot of opportunities here. I started flying offshore helicopters, and there's a huge offshore industry here in Nigeria with oil and gas and everything. So it was a fantastic opportunity. It was an opportunity that was available to me. So that initiated my first move back. And what happens is, one of the coolest things about, flying offshore helicopters is, we get put on what's called a rotation. So like I would work for 6 weeks, like at a stretch, and then my company would just give me 6 weeks off, right? And then so that was really, really cool. So in essence, right, you work for 6 months, you get 6 months holiday, but they pay you for 12 months. So it's really, really good. So that's what I was doing. So although I'd moved back to work in Nigeria, I was still actually living in the United Kingdom. Okay. And I was going back and forth until eventually I got married. And then both my wife and I, we moved from the UK, and then we moved to Nigeria to really kind of set up a home here. Because we didn't want, it's really not good for family life, when you're constantly away. Which, as I mentioned to you, these were some of the decisions that even caused me to even stop flying. So we've moved back, and then after some time, we moved to the United Kingdom again. Right, we're there for about maybe 2 years or so, and very recently, last year, we've moved back to Nigeria now for good. And what fueled it, right? First of all, God, like I said, we follow instructions. But secondly, I think there's this jackpot mentality, right? Like everybody's trying to leave. Everybody, like the grass is greener on the other side. Let's all go to Canada. Let's all go to the United Kingdom, and everybody's trying to escape the problems that are in our beloved country, Nigeria. I don't think that's the solution. And so for me, and I know people can say, well, it's easier said than you grew up in the United Kingdom. Yeah, but that was then, this is now. I love this country. I'm a patriot, and I believe that this country, it will turn out well at the end of the day. But if everybody's running away, then who's going to fix the problems here in the country? Right. I think we also, in Nigeria, as Nigerians, we have this mentality, right, of we just need a messiah. The election is coming up. One person will save us. One person will save us. I don't subscribe to that mentality. I believe that we are the saviors. Mojibade, you are the Messiah. You heard it. Yeah, she's Messiah in red, right? You're like, if there are problems in this country, you're going to be the solution. Right. If there are problems in this country, I'm going to be the solution. The guys who are filming this stuff, like you guys, you're the solution, right? In your industries, you're the solution. In your communities,
it's a collective responsibility.
It's a collective responsibility, and I'm like, well, if everybody's running away, then who's going to fix the problem? Who's going to stand up and rise up as a leader and be like, hey, you know what? This is what we're going to do. And so these were some of the things that influenced me moving back. And also, one thing which I tell people is, hey, problem equals potential. Problems equals potential. So long as there are problems that are around, right? Then if you're able to come up with a solution, right, then it's going to benefit you, maybe from a financial perspective or whatever, and it's going to benefit everybody. So long as there are problems and you're able to say, okay, you know what, and there are problems everywhere. It's very easy for people to point out problems. Right. Go on the street right now, everybody's pointing, this is the problem, da, 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 da. Okay, what's the solution? And unfortunately, we live in a country where especially in Lagos, right, everything is just so hectic. Everybody's just hustling and bustling, and it's just so fast-paced that nobody takes the time to just sit down and think, okay, like, how can we actually fix this practically? And so for me, there are a lot of problems in Nigeria, and I'm here to fix a lot of them. So that, combined with a few other factors as well, inspired the decision to come back and move to Nigeria, and hey, we're here to stay. But
looking back in retrospect, do you have any regrets?
Oh, no, zero.
No. Oh, awesome, I like that. None. Okay, thank you so much, Captain Zino. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and again, very inspiring session, just listening to you, learning from you, even as the interviewer. It's been really interesting and inspiring for me. Thank you very much for joining us on this segment of Getting to Know Captain Zino. We'll be right back, and this time we'll be talking about love. I know that we all love to listen to love stories. He'll tell us about his love life, how he met his wife, and what inspired him to be such a great family man. And there are other things we'll talk about. So to find out, make sure you watch the next episode.